Hello, David McMillan here, former smuggler, 35 years in the trade, man and boy, and I'd been giving spending an hour with Shaun Attwood on his true crime channel, talking about lockdown, coronavirus, the latest, the gossip, a load of old rubbish really, but they were kind of good. It was a bit of a break from Shaun's kind of serious tone as the London-based activist, but he's had to take those down because YouTube have been threatening him. Well, who knows whether that would have come to anything, but if you enjoyed those, I've archived them and I'll play them on my channel. And I don't know, I'll see who I can talk to have a few laughs. Any suggestions? Anyway, enjoy the latest with Shaun and I, which is probably the funniest. Don't expect any great lockdown advice. Not from me, anyway. Here it is. Place that will go 500 miles down the coast, or something.
Are you ready for me to start?
Yes, I suppose so. I'll just close my door.
Okay.
To the padded walls made out of various things. I should put my other... these, they look like some kind of teardrop earrings, these things. I've just... very gay, I must say, my pink shirt. Oh, well, I need... Look, if Netflix can do Hollywood, I might as well put on fucking earrings, you know what I mean?
And here we are, folks, with our 9th episode of Coronavirus Chats with David McMillan. If you want political correctness, this is not the place. If you're into gallows humor, this is the place.
Yes, size 9 around the neck.
David served 2 decades on 5 continents, was on death row twice, escaped, and managed to get out of situations people would have perished in.
And they did. But when it came turn for my perishment, I declined, Shaun. Yes, I was smuggling for 40 years. Had a high life in the 70s and 80s, Lebanon, India, then went on and crashed and burnt. Yes, a massive 6-month trial put me in prison for over a decade, supermaxes, and did I learn my lesson? Yes, try not to get caught was the lesson. But they were waiting for me.
And he went on to have his own YouTube channel, the link is in the description box, and to write 2 books, Escape and Unforgiving Destiny.
You got it right, Shaun. No, thank you very much. I always appreciate that. I knew when I had a title such as Unforgiving Destiny, which has got perhaps 1 or 2 too many syllables in it, and then the subtitle, The Relentless Pursuit of a Black Marketeer, I realized too late that people would think I was some kind of Harlem numbers man. A black marketeer? What? You're selling corn and grits? No, that's not the... all right, yeah.
More like the caller of numbers at a bingo game.
True, but... Oh, yeah, that's about as low as you get.
Is that lower than the pox doctor's clerk?
Oh, definitely. Really, look, the pox doctor, he's very selective on his clerks. He wants somebody with a pleasing manner and a bit like, what's the actor's name? Sidney Sheldon in Big Bang, who is playing, by the way, a very predatory sort of agent in the new Netflix series Hollywood. But we're not here in our weekly chats, which seem to be morphing from coronavirus chats into hay fever conversations, perhaps. I've come across quite a few people who insist they've had it. They haven't invested in any of the test kits, which must be a racket and a half, mustn't it? I was thinking, somebody who is completely unscrupulous, somebody here like that? No? Yeah. Could get some, those kind of drug test kits they used to sell concerned parents, relabel them or something like that. But National Health Service here in the UK is saying, nope,
don't buy those. We've got our own brand coming. So, what do you think they'll run for? A couple of hundred? Yeah, gotta be. I know, it's a killer. I was taking little Nico for a walk in the park, trying to tell him there'd be a newcomer to the household, a little puppy in a couple of weeks, but he wasn't listening. But it dawned on me, 1984. Why the George Orwell novel? Well, it makes probably quite good but depressing lockdown reading. It's not really quite cheery, something to do with torture and rats. But there are certain elements about it which are familiar. In that fictional work of the dystopian future, it had, written in 1948, that's why it was called 1984, backwards. There was always this war in the East. So everybody was on a wartime footing. And that's why they had to tolerate various intrusions and restrictions and limitations. Sound familiar? So we have our war from the East. In this case, it's got a nice Asian ring. I mean, just ask the great Donald. He'll be the first to call it the Chinese virus, won't he? Although he's probably feeling a bit better now that what's he on? Chloroquine as of last night?
As well as other drugs.
Oh, yes. He does tend to sit there before a microphone that some controller, I mean, Ronnie Reagan used to have, I shouldn't even mention the two in the same breath. Reagan was a consummate professional, but apart from when Alzheimer's kicked in, of course, but he did lose it a bit. But had the benefit of somebody who would cut him off if he started to. You remember that famous thing when Reagan says, he's doing a kind of mic test for some interviewer and saying, okay, well, let's see. We'll launch an all-out preemptive nuclear strike against the Soviet Union in 10 minutes. And that was not exactly hilarious in the Kremlin. So, but at least Donald's not a warmonger. Can't call him that. War profiteer? Perhaps so. But his hands are tied. He can't exactly run out and invest in malaria drugs at the moment, can he? No. But yes, the whole mood by, I think, this must be coming up to the 8th little fireside chat between you and I to warm the cockles of the infected heart out there. We can say the mood has shifted from the dazed confusion of last week's, morass of partial advice, instructions, mystifying subclauses to it, to just walking around like a great Stepford community. And that's another, the Stepford wives I think they were robots or something, weren't they?
Yes.
And there's a lot of kind of robotic people wandering around the streets. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. But
Stay away from me! Stay away from me!
Yeah.
No. I prefer Davros to the Stepfords.
That's true. At least they had that key phrase, exterminate. But I kind of, now that you mention it, I bet you it comes to mind because it's sort of viral, isn't it? The Daleks. They have that dodecahedral 12-sided shape of a virus. Though I think the coronavirus is 18-sided. Anyway, they've got lots of little bits. So they're a bit Dalek-like.
Did you have Davros fantasies as a child, David?
No, but I did and I'll never remember the name, of the home planet of the Good Doctor, which was something vaguely Hellenic, a sort of some classical Greek sort of sounding name of an idyllic place. But you can imagine imagine our world full of Time Lords. I'd be Shaun, is this Shaun now or Shaun in 10 minutes in the future, or have you run back as the other Shaun to fix up one of my blunders? In which case you might as well go back 40 years because I started young, I only arrived in Lebanon and the Civil War kicked off. Wow. It was quite peaceful before that. That has taught me not to worry too much in times of conflagration. Though a lot of people are being neglected in this. Our usual lost causes in immigration camps, they're all in deep trouble. There's a huge one in Greece, apparently. They're only throwing the food over the wall, a bit like, what was it, Escape from New York City, in which the prisoners were living in the then abandoned New York, which are just thrown over to the criminals who are dumped in there. Not too sure where they got their food from. There was a reference to food drops, but that would have been a scary thing to be around, wouldn't it?
Your arrival in Lebanon was obviously an early warning sign of your later career as the Grim Reaper's diary keeper.
It was a bit. I joined some. Really, there were Lebanese guys from Australia. Sydney is this. I think it's the third biggest Lebanese city in the world by numbers. So there were lots of people there, and it was so, it had French influences, and then it was all very peaceful, and the rest of the Arab world. I've got a client at the moment putting some cameras in for him, and he's from, I think, Iraqi, more across from Syria, and his contemporaries regard Lebanese as, beyond the pale, just too liberal-minded for anything. But that may be so, westernized to a degree. But when the war kicked in, they really took to it with a passion. And the Christians, there seems to be a monopoly now, doesn't there, on thinking that the Muslim world is a dangerous part of the Arab-speaking world. But the Christian phalangists in Lebanon were pretty nasty. But I remember down one street, there was, is it called an oud? What's that Lebanese or Arabic guitar? It's got the bent stops on it. Anyway, the girl was playing that. The guy had some kind of wind instrument, and they were dressed like hippies, but they were walking over the corpses of their enemies who were across what later became the Green Line. No, the whole country turned into a complete but very interesting mess, of which the Summerland Hotel was it in Juni? I think so, was kind of off limits. You could go there, hang up your guns at the door. They had a parrot, I remember. And you weren't allowed to shoot each other in the Summerland. Order a meal, have a drink at the bar. But that's what's missing from our coronavirus wartime footing, I think. We have the enemy, but we don't really have, any kind of tactical sides. Are we in uniform? Yes, we have the nurses, the doctors, they're our frontline troops, but we don't really have the victories. I don't know whether you've had you couldn't possibly have been bored enough to sit through one of the daily briefings. They're numbing, aren't they? Even before they, the other night on BBC, they had worse microphone troubles than I have, and you could barely hear a word, and nobody complained. Very reluctantly, they switched from the room mic to a body mic after some time.
Good to hear your mic is operating perfectly on this occasion.
It is because I've got one of those double set ones, you see. This is the backup one, and there's another one dangling around my nose area. And some other device was Amazon to me today. But I keep thinking I've got some other solution, but I think you've gone about it the right way. Hand it over to somebody who knows what he's doing. And then, by the way, have you got a memory foam cushion under your butt for your interviewing position there?
I do. Somebody sent me one, and I looked at it, and it's like over £100 on Amazon, and it has a special name and everything. And it is the best cushion you could ever possibly imagine.
What is sort of crack comfort or something like that? No, that would be misunderstood.
You keep talking, and I'll go get it.
Okay, while we wait for the crack comfort or whatever Shaun's cushion is, I should say don't rush out and get the local crack because it's pretty substandard and it's not much comfort at all. It very much alienates the relationship. One person, one room, one person in another. But let's see whether this has memory foam or it's actually made by the same plastic as the sex toy manufacturers that we came up with last week. Is it something for your lockdown comfort or is it not, Shaun? So you're sitting on it now.
People just send me things. It's got a name. It's called Kiesta with a Q.
Yeah, right.
And someone who just saw my stuff just sent me this, and it is brilliant.
I knew you had a dead letter drop somewhere there, Shaun, but
when I'm watching Netflix, my skull, my cranium just sinks and it just morphs around me. It's and it's not, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. It's just I have a genuine love of my Kiesta, but when I do actually go to sleep at night, because 6 years Arizona prison, I didn't have any pillows. I've now got to the point where I don't like a pillow, but if a pillow is about that skinny,
it's actually better for your head and neck.
If I've got a very skinny pillow, barely a pillow, that's what I sleep on now.
You didn't make up an Arizona special pillow.
You could make pillows, but the guards would just come in, grab them, classify them as contraband, write you up, and it wasn't worth the hassle. Some people were buying pillows, some people were manufacturing pillows, but generally you didn't see that very often.
What were they? Just a folded blanket in a sock or something?
I'm not sure. I don't know how they made them.
In the Thai prison.
Stuffed something inside of something.
In the Thai prison, when I was there for 2 years, awaiting trial on feeble charges, but ones sufficient to have me executed. One of the processes was your first bedding in a 160-man dormitory would have been the cheap seats, which is bits of cardboard in the corridor. Then you could graduate to a bit of foam, only a couple of inches thick, actually very good for the back, or have for, let me think of the cost, about £12, $15 or something. It was not very comfortable anyway. It was a whole lot of stolen blankets from the hospital, I think, but stitched in to make a mattress. But it was extraordinary there how, many little cottage industries there were. There was a guy whose stall, a laid out blanket during the day, was nothing more than repairing disposable cigarette lighters and regassing them. They haven't got a hole in the bottom, so you had to fiddle with it, take the thing off, bend it back. But as one of the locals said, it's a living. Even the notorious blind beggar of Klong Prem, he had his rags fashioned by somebody. I mean, they were well done. He could get up in the morning and have a stretch and a shower and develop that glazed look he needed to be blind. I think he just had some conjunctivitis or something. Anyway, his rags he would just slip into, and they were impressive. I mean, they were, Hollywood prop store material. They were very good. Unfortunately, what did he sell? Handmade cigarettes from a crappy towel. But I don't know. People thought it was good luck to do something kind for the blind man. But was he blind? I don't know. I was preparing for the big escape, Shaun. So I needed to not so much put on weight, but stamina I thought I'd need, and I did. But this involved a kind of morning run. And I ran around a big hall, which was open-aired, but it had chicken wire. Now, the blind man used to see me whoosh past. And one thing he had to social distance himself was an incredible deep-throated cough. There were great rumblings from his infected lungs. This may not be the best conversation at the moment, but nonetheless it was true. Anyway, when he spat something, stand clear. Now, I was on my third lap before the end, the anti-penultimate lap. And as I went past, I looked up too late. I saw those rubbery lips peel back like, I don't know, some alien head getting ready to give birth to some spawn. And then this flickering tongue, you know, a tongue with cracks and things in it. And then out it came. And of course, they say light travels faster than sound, but I tell you what, this man's sputum travelled faster than the sound of it that reached my ears. And it hit my Lacoste T-shirt with a thump of a silenced 45 from a professional assassin. I reeled back into the stone lions that had been put in front of the cell block building. By the way, those stone lions were said to actually roar, believe it or not. Yes, stone lions would roar every time somebody went in there that was not gay. So it didn't happen in my time. Stone, of course. But I just tore off the T-shirt and threw it away. But you can't really throw anything away there. It had 5 or 6 scavengers dived in the rubbish heap straight away afterwards, and that was washed, ironed, and sold on to somebody else by the afternoon. It was only delayed by the strength of the wind. No, I've kind of been socially distancing ever since that. I mean, the memory's strong, isn't it? It stays with me. That piece of phlegm actually tumbled in the air. It had eyes, tentacles. It's nightmarish. But at least that was light-hearted compared to Pakistan. But I won't go there. I shall go on to the war in the East. Do you know what's coming next month? We have a team, yes, of 25,000 testers and trackers. What the hell? They, by some means or another, probably the magic app that we'll be unveiled to start using. Will you use it, Shaun? I don't think so.
Well, we're already getting tracked in every way possible through our phones, aren't we? So what are they going to add on with this app, do you think?
Well, they probably, of course, people have got great fears over it, but I don't see that they'll be doing anything, as you say, that can't be done already. I think we've discussed before how much those with any smartphone, but certainly the Apple with Google Maps running in the background, it's never really very far into the background and certainly knows your every move. Mine has started telling me, oh, we saved your parking spot, by the way, whenever I stop. So it knows when I've started walking away. They don't know it's my car. But what they've done is, of course, he was going at 30 miles an hour and suddenly he's at walking pace. He must be out of the car. So they memorize the last point where you were just before you, when you're going faster, and that's where you must have parked the car. So I can always find it. You don't have to pin it as one must before. So yeah, what the hell difference does it make? Oh, I'll get the app. I'll get 5 of them. I don't care. One for every 5. Even the burners can have the app. But I don't know what this team of testers and trackers do. Presumably they, when it gets flagged up that you've had social contact with somebody who's infected, and how do they know that? Another mystery. Or recently been infected or will become infected. It gets more complicated, doesn't it? You will be notified that one of your contacts was diseased, and you should forthwith barricade the door and lock yourself in a broom cupboard and don't come out until you get the little bit of music that will no doubt come out of the app to say it's time to leave. What would you choose for the all clear music for the coronavirus app.
The all clear music for the coronavirus app. It should be something victorious.
Mm-hmm. You think
something Churchillian.
Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Fanfare for the Common Man, maybe?
Could you recite that and refresh my...
It's kind of used at football events and things like that, when the team's steaming in. Or the great classic, Richard Strauss's Das Speck Zacharusta, the often called the theme music for 2001: A Space Odyssey, used when an ancestor to man, sorry creationists, an ancestor to man first picked up a bone and killed a tapir, I think it was, with it. So I have a tool, and in a very good bit of cinematic magic, the proto-human flung his new tool up into the air, and as it spun up out of camera range, it was transformed into a spacecraft orbiting Earth. So a quick couple of million years of hominin development, and there we are. I think something should be specially written, and YouTubers and coronarists, your submissions will be welcome, and we will pass them on, Shaun, won't we, to the appropriate musical release department.
I'd like a remix of Vivaldi's Gloria.
Yes, it's quite passionate, isn't it? Or one of those kind of, for somebody with a slightly hippie bent, Morning is Broken, the old Cat Stevens song, you know, Virus is Broken. I would think after a couple of weeks in a broom cupboard, isolating away there, with nothing but your app for comfort, perhaps there should be, maybe, why don't we make a 14-day self-isolation video that will take you from all the stages: denial, grief, resolution, acceptance, forgiveness, all of those things during those 14 days, so you can stumble out into the new dawn, walk out into the street, say, I am free, free of the fears, I am free birds, free trees, walk backwards into the road and get hit by a bus. So
during World War II, they used Beethoven's Fifth, the short, long V for victory.
Oh, because of its Morse code connection. That's not bad. And I think when transmitting to the French resistance, they quoted from some poem. I forget the one, but that was the signal. I don't know whether it was a bit of a literate choice, don't you think? Like a snappy bit of music, fine. Lithuanian national anthem, right, got it. As soon as I hear that, grab a gun, go shoot Nazi. But a poem, I mean, you'd have to memorize a damn thing. You know, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Francois, did he say cloud? No, it wasn't lonely as a cloud. It's a fucking daffodil. Was it daffodil? Anyway, there would be these disputes down in the resistance, which could have meant a different outcome to D-Day. And we'd be having more Germans in the royal family than ever.
I would have rather used some Edward Lear.
Yeah.
Far easier to remember.
True. And has anybody ever discovered what a runcible spoon is? The Owl and the Pussycat that comes from, folks. A beautiful little poem about an owl who is very fond and loves pussy. And he and Pussy, yeah, it was a bit funny now that you think about it. It was all that spoon business. I think it's probably like the splork. You ever used the splork? It's the kind of plastic utensil you get with a very substandard salad in a ready meal. It's a spoon with a few splits in it to make tines for a fork. It means you can't eat anything properly without it slopping down your wrist.
We had shank-proof sporks to eat our mystery meat slop, our Red Death, and I just looked up runtable spoon.
Did you?
The current definition is a fork curved like a spoon with 3 broad prongs, one of which has a sharpened outer edge for cutting.
Well, that's very specific, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially since Edward Lear was, famous for actually just making things up. Did he write Jabberwocky? Or who did?
I remember there was an old man with a beard. Says, no, it is just as I feared. 3 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nests in my beard.
Ah, well, that's where that comes. I only have this image of a drawing of some old gent with a great mane of growth coming from under his chin and little birds chirping away in there.
Did he write Jazbez Dawes? Jazbez Dawes.
No, I was thinking of Jabberwocky, which was about some monster, and the word sounds a bit like Edward Lear. But I hope to be corrected. By the way, did you know that this week, when we speak of being locked down and prisoners escaping, the very impressive disappearance of what was his name? Carlos Ghosn, it's pronounced, though there's an S in there somewhere. He was the Nissan chief in Japan, facing charges on a very tough he didn't get bail for a long time, finally got it. Oh, he was tagged to the max. I think he had one on both wrists and, up the ankle, the knee, groin, everywhere. And strict conditions, but he probably looked at the future and the 99.9% conviction rate in the Japanese court system. Decided, yes, and usually based on confessions. So if you don't confess, you get the cold room, you get the bad food treatment. Well, Wendy, you don't. I mean, not really brutal, but enough to snap you out. They find it terribly embarrassing for somebody to say, I'm not guilty, prove your case. It's all like a very disrespectful moment there. So, Carlos, there were some business malfeasance charges of some kind. He disappeared one night. It is said, probably wrong, that he was smuggled out in musical instrument cases from a party at his house. It is said, and almost certainly correctly, that his adoring wife was a kind of organizer, or certainly paymistress, in what a couple of my friends have estimated to be around 6 million, to get him whisked out, trained down to Osaka, put on a private jet from a Turkish-based executive jet company, the Turkish owner of which is now saying, it was a rogue employee. Isn't it funny how something happens?
That's what the CIA say every time they get caught shipping cocaine.
Yeah, I can imagine. This was just a rogue, not particularly good, as Trump says that. He wasn't very good at his job. Employee up to some mischief, supported by another rogue employee. In fact, there were about 600 rogues all working in great coordination as the subterfuge went on. Now, this leads to the arrest yesterday of an ex-Green Beret on charges of having helped him in this escape. What I was hoping somebody might be able to tell me, on what charge? I think the Japanese named this guy and his son, I believe, and so there's an extradition request, and which led to a US warrant being issued. I presume that's all it is. I mean, there are myriad laws, isn't there? Like, if you and I decide there are injustices in the world and run away to, well, Syria is an obvious place, but there's no shortage of let's just say, even one that's not so well known, the great conflict of Transdnestria. No, it's not what you're thinking. It's not a nightclub east of Berlin. It's a part of Azerbaijan, I think, is one border. But it's made a slither of disputed territory. Anyway, if we get training and decide to join a cause to fight abroad somewhere, that's a violation of a UK law. And so we can get locked up for that. Doesn't matter how right you're called. I mean, there have been people here charged with fighting for the Assad government, with the revolutionaries against the Assad government, fighting particularly against Daesh, or what did we used to call them? Al-Qaeda, yeah. How fashions change, yeah.
Well, you started with 1984. George Orwell. Have you read The Road to Catalonia?
No, is that the Spanish Civil War?
Yeah.
Right.
So whose side was he on then?
Well, you would expect him to be a bit of a lefty and on the commie side.
So he was fighting with the communists. So how would we have treated him coming back to the motherland?
Yeah, badly, especially today. But even then, in the 30s, and well later, it was a father would be proud of his English-born son who ran off to fight a war. In that, I forget her name now, but she wrote Love and a Cold Climate. It was a very English book about minor lords and ladies and their goings on. I think some guy was blessed with 5 daughters and one son who seemed to do nothing. And when Dad heard that he'd run off to fight in the Spanish Civil War, somebody said, yes, but on what side? And Dad said, who cares what side? At least he got off his ass and ran away and did something. And now that'd be, whichever side, it'd be a crime, wouldn't it? And really taken the fun out of adventuring. I don't know what kind of lives we're supposed to live.
On the subject of Japan, are you familiar with the Japanese cannibal?
Okay. You know what flashed to mind? That Japanese soldier in the Philippines who didn't surrender and then was found, I don't know, 30 years after the war, living off the land. I don't know whether he ate his mates. But
No, this actual cannibal ate a lady in France. I think she was a student, and he managed to get transferred back to Japan. He's from a wealthy family. They said he was mentally ill, and he got out and started doing interviews and became a celebrity.
Really? In France?
In Japan?
Oh, in Japan? I was going to say in France.
The crime was committed in France.
Okay, gotcha.
But he managed to get transferred back to Japan and get released after he ate this woman.
Really? Did he have any cooking tips? Did he sort of come out with the human guide to the choicest cuts?
I'm going to look him up now.
Okay, well, be lucky.
Is a Sagawa.
Is a Sagawa? I thought there was a famous writer like that, but still.
While living in Paris in 1981, killed and cannibalized a Dutch woman. He was released after 2 years of pre-trial detention upon being found legally insane.
That old thing, yeah. Wow.
The old insane card, yeah.
And so was thrown out of the country and became a celebrity chef in Japan. Wow. It didn't say...
He had his first cannibalistic desires whilst in first grade after seeing a male's thigh. In a 2011 interview with Vice, he reported that as a youth, he partook in... Oh, dear.
His story's getting worse.
Probably don't want to say these words on the video.
Well, describe it.
Let's just say he experienced cannibalistic desires for women. Yeah. At 24 in Tokyo, he followed a tall German woman home, broke into her apartment while she was asleep with the intent to slice off part of her buttocks and sneak away with a small part of her flesh. But she awoke and pushed him to the ground. He was captured by the police and charged with attempted rape. He did not confess his true intentions. At the age of 27, he moved to France to pursue a PhD in literature at the Sorbonne. While residing in Paris, almost every night I would bring a prostitute home and then try to shoot them. But for some reason, my fingers froze up and I couldn't pull the trigger. So then he ended up targeting his classmate in 1981. He invited her to dinner.
And that was the Dutch woman.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what puzzles me about crime in general and cannibalistic attempts, particularly here, is how he imagined that any turn of events during the evening might have the woman asleep and not noticing that a quarter of her butt cheek had been carved off and wrapped up in cling film. What is he going to stitch her back up again and make up some story in the morning?
Well, he had she was 5'10", he was only 4 foot something, and he considered himself weak and ugly, and her the opposite, and he wanted to absorb her energy. So she began to read poetry at a desk with her back to him, and he shot her in the neck with a rifle. And then he fainted at the shock of shooting her, but awoke with the realization he now had to continue. He made love to her, but could not bite into her skin because his teeth were not sharp enough.
Well, she's shot at this point.
Yes, so he left and purchased a butcher's knife, and then he began to eat various parts of her body, breast, face, saved parts in the refrigerator, taking photographs at each eating stage. He tried to dump her body in the lake, but was seen in the act and was arrested by the French police. When he was caught, he was carrying 2 suitcases of dismembered body parts.
Well, I can see, Shaun, why you saved that one for tonight. That is meat and potatoes to me. I mean, it does sound a bit troubled, don't you think? But I did, when I thought of him stitching her up if she was still alive so she wouldn't notice, have you ever heard of the expression, a night on the town, in smuggling circles? No? Well, a most notorious, ruthless, well, you could say small time in terms of quantities, but a smuggler, used to come up with these bizarre kind of schemes. He went on a cruise ship with some old people and made sure they shopped for the same wooden elephant and did a switch, and when they got back to the west he made some excuse to go around and see them, but he'd always kind of lose it at the last minute and drop the facade of being friendly. So, where's the fucking elephant, you old bastard? But he had if that was a dark side, no, you've got no idea. He started eyeing up corpulent people, chubby people who would, say, be carrying 4 to 6 kilos of extra body fat in there, yes. And they would be blessed with a local raffle win and a trip to Thailand. And no, I better not mention his name. He's gone now, bless him. But he's got family. He once in Thailand, he would kind of run into them and then have a night on the town and have one too many drinks, or particularly chubby, whose drink would be spiked. And he would wake up and Frank, we'll call this guy Frank, would be at his bedside in a local clinic with a black eye, and Chubby would be there with a great scar down one side and a near matching one on the other, not knowing that silicone wrapped with about 3.5 kilos of heroin stuffed into him. I said, well, Frank, how good was the doctor? That he was pretty good, you know. Didn't want him dying before he got back or anything like that. I said, well, you're all hard. So Frank would sit at the hospital bedside and make up a story how they got drunk and came out of the bar, and Fatso made a lunge at some gangster's girl and knives came out, and it was lucky, Frank says, lucky I was there. I'm sorry I couldn't, stop you being stabbed, but I did my best. The makeup running off the eye from the false tears. And so they'd return back. He'd go back to Sydney, and so would Fat Stuff. And they would have occasion to meet. After all, Blubberguts has got a new pal there, the one who saved his life in Thailand, the man who was at his side when it was darkest, whose life was on the line. I suppose with that Thai doctor, his life was on the line. And I did say to Frank, so you'd meet up, fairly carefully, and then you'd go out again for another drink, I suppose, was it? You got it. Special drink. I said, but Frank, it's one thing getting some loony kicked out of the hospital drug addict doctor in the back streets of Bangkok to do an operation like that. In Sydney, in Australia, in the West, how the hell did you find any doctor willing to do that? Take it out and, stitch him up again. He looked at me with utter astonishment at my naivety. He said, Dave, I didn't need a doctor for stage 2. So, as I took several steps backwards, I've got to get home early tonight, Frank. The missus won't let me never take her anywhere. Fucking hell. The expression "somebody deserves a night on the town" has kind of stayed with a bunch of people in a very small circle of desperados.
And the lesson is keep your day jobs, kids. Don't be hanging out with those trafficking folk.
Oh no! And if a guy, a very old man called Frank, comes up to you, and that night you're lucky and you win a ticket for travels around the world. If you're getting too lucky, there's almost always something behind it. Nobody has much luck. And even if you do, you pay for it down the line. So and stay sober in dangerous territory. I think that's a good lesson, don't you, Shaun? Yeah.
Absolutely. Keep your wits about you at all times. And if you are out in public, watch what you drink, because people put things in drinks. And in Mexico, for example, I'll give you a story.
Yeah.
There was a tall trans prostitute called the Black Widow, and
we were waiting for that one, weren't we? Okay. Yeah.
I had some friends in charge of operations in Puerto Penasco, and there was a club that only the locals went to that they took me to, and they showed me the Black Widow, and they said that the Black Widow would seduce people who would come down to Puerto Penasco, solicit them for prostitution, put something in the drink, and the next day they would wake up and an organ would have been removed.
What, for the black market in
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually a kidney, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Did they just take chances with the blood type? It wasn't like they were shopping for anything particular. I don't suppose they had to worry about that.
I don't know the exact specifics.
I wasn't thinking of going. Oh, Shaun, you make me blush. I wasn't thinking of going to some illicit. How much were they getting? Some illicit. But they have to keep it cold, surely.
You could source them much cheaper from the prisoners of China.
Oh yes, we were saying the other week that it was. But there is markups along the line. By the way, my blood plasma thing's kicking off, as you say. They're doing trials on it, and it could be a treatment. But there is also, who was it? Somebody yesterday said, this guy worked for the NSA, and he was talking about people, unscrupulous scoundrels, our favourite kind of people, for entertainment purposes only, were on the dark web using NSA security agency techniques in manipulation to work on people's fears to get them to buy various bits of crap. I don't know really why the story was talked up. I mean, we get the same thing from the big banks and all our advertisers now. You probably noticed the spate of very soft and cozy bits of advertising, such and such supermarket supports, bugger I know what.
Supermax.
Yeah.
Freudian.
Yes, I'll call it Supermax is short for supermarkets. They're nothing like, really. Not much choice at all. And mind you, it was the same choice with getting a bog roll was damn hard in Supermax. I don't know what it was like. And toilet rolls short in Arizona, were they?
Yeah, in Supermax. So while I was there, I had a cellmate, and we had one bog roll for a week, I think, or so many days. So
Wow.
if you stood up and peed, it was polite to take a few sections of bog roll and wipe the splash off the rim of the toilet.
That's
But-
just fair, yes.
But that would mean that we would run out of bog roll before we got our next allocation. So you'd have to discuss with your cellmate about sitting down to pee.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't cause that splash to utilize necessarily all of that extra bog roll.
Of course, one doesn't always want to be associated with the squat to pee set in a big prison.
It's a bit effeminate, isn't it? If you're in the macho environment.
Yeah, no, it's actually more relaxing anyway.
You could be more masculine and run out of toilet paper, or you can sit down and you can have enough to wipe your ass with.
Was it available from the commissary?
No.
Oh, really? So they were using it as a tool.
Well, in the jail, in Sheriff Joe Arpaio's jail, there was periodic food poisoning. And when it ran out, then the prisoners would just mob my cell and take all my copies of the Financial Times.
What, for toilet paper?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose the FT is probably, bound to have a bit of shit on its face in the end. It's really predicted things a bit poorly. But that would probably not be the most exotic bum wiping thing I've ever seen. I was in where the hell was it? Some part of Albanian border, and the Thunderbox out back I was expecting an old telephone book like an idiot. I mean, but it had about 4 names in it anyway, the telephone book. It'd be a very thin edition. No, but there was a wooden crate there with a whole lot of husks from corn cobs that had been eaten. And I don't know what the decorum there was, but it does seem a downward step from where the ancient Romans had the sponge, didn't they? Like sponge divers would go down
like a loofah.
Yeah, and the sponge was in a little pot. I don't know, in a rich public toilet, and in Rome it'd probably be scented or something.
Did you twiddle the husk in your cornmeal?
I don't know really how to answer that one. I think really it depends how the experience would shift from acceptable to unpleasant based on not predilection, but on the age of the said husk. If it was very dried out, it would be a scratchy old affair, and you'd probably settle for the Somali version of a bum wipe, which I can tell you that too, such as my travels have taken me.
Were the husks all of equal girth?
No, that's a question I wouldn't dare to ask. But they were, by most people's standards, they were kind of mealy mouth, thin husk. Wouldn't get a job in Hollywood with that sort of husk, I'd say that. But the Somalians use a rounded pebble. Yeah. Even if they're a bit inland, in which you don't get many rounded pebbles, perhaps the desert winds have burnished.
What's the mechanics of the rounded pebble?
Well, without going into the
Please do.
the sine wave computations of rectal diameter exclusion and peblic manipulation, I would think the lithogluteus maxography, if I can develop a word with some Latin roots for wiping one's bum with a pebble, would involve finding a cornerish edge and treating it somewhat like, you know, those little yogurts you get and it comes with the spoon. One's got like maybe oatmeal on one side and one's got the yogurt on the other, and you sort of have to put that splork, as you described them before, or spork was it, and dig it into the small container of yogurt. Some much the same sort of dexterity would be required in both cases for the Somalian stone.
What would happen if the Somalian stone should meet a dingleberry?
Well, it's all on. It's anybody's guess what happens from there. They've never been friends, the Somalian stone and the dingleberry. Dingleberries are hill people, as you know. And the stone folk, well, they're rough trade in the city. I just wouldn't like to be a bystander for that one. It'd certainly be something that'd make my butt clench, I can tell you that much. Where else can we go in the world for, if we have any...
You could crack two pebbles together and light someone's arse with that, if it's hairy.
I suppose early man must have done that and decided that all those flints were certainly useless at bum wiping. But those flints did make quite good arrowheads. So maybe humanity's got that to thank for itself. The discovery that it was better to use flint for hunting down prey and feeding the rest of the tribe than for going anywhere near the cleanup operations after a galactic thunder.
We're almost at the hour if you've got any questions to answer.
Yes, like, what am I doing here? There's nothing on my other one, a bit of papers there. I don't think anybody... there were some questions this week, but they were so inane that it was for my mental health that I just didn't take them on board. But I think we tried.
Post your more articulate, adventurous questions in the comments, please.
Yes, and do so. And I know we drift a bit from the point. Somebody would be forgiven for thinking that instead of giving lockdown advice, we were giving locked-in advice in one of those bad public toilets where there's just no paper anywhere. You've called out to strangers. Somebody won't even roll you a roll under the cubicle doors, which is pretty bad. But what do you think underwear are for in an emergency? But
especially when you have to go all of a sudden and you're away from home.
Yes.
My mainstays, usually I'll try and find the nearest McDonald's or the nearest Weatherspoons. You can just get in through the crowd and get into the toilet.
And true. In fact, I started noting the best public toilet facilities in the world. And I noticed that in Luxembourg City, near the train station, most luxurious public toilet. You could move in. Okay, they charged a fee for having a shower. Yes, they had shower cubicles. Would rent you a towel. Had vending machines for all sorts of contraptions, soap and toothpaste and brush to go with it. It was super efficient. I mean, how did that compare with my first job, without getting sidetracked here at all, was working in a crappy cinema as a usher assistant manager. I don't know, the guy with the big torch with dents in it from battering scumbags who'd come in to watch the soft porn. You know, it was a whole lot of cheap German shit in a schoolgirl report. But the thing is, with the public toilet there, it was between 2 floors, so people could come in and not be seen. So it was a notorious gay pickup place. And when I had to fill the kettle to make everybody a cup of tea, I did kind of kick 2 of the double doors to give them a bit of warning. And I kicked one door and there's a great scrambling noises. And by the time I, opened the other one, I'd sort of avert my gaze and go to fill up my kettle and look over, and there'd be 6 guys lined up. Nary a splash could be heard. Oh no, their winkles were not in a peeing mood at that time. So, from the lowest of public toilets to Luxembourg City, it was quite a survey. If we have time, we could perhaps devote an entire program to public facilities around the world, which, sadly, Corona-ists are all locked down at the moment. I think it'll be a long time before you can go spend £1 at Harrods in London to spend a penny, for their supposedly flash toilets. But we dream that day will come back when you can... Oh, by the way, you have to tip the guy. What's he do? He sort of does your fly up or something as you come out in Harrods. And it's a chain. No, you don't get to pass him the money, even if it's a banknote. You just throw it in his little tray. I mean, everybody's got to earn a living, eh, Shaun? Look at us. Stuck here at God knows what hour. Serving the community.
Our coronavirus chats are completely freestyle. No scripts here. And whether they end on a scatological note or not is completely without prediction. But it has happened. It has happened this evening. People. And let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Say whatever you like, but share your thoughts. Look, people are missing these little breaks from the terrible viral times, and they just pass them on, because we want the insanity to take over from rationality, don't we? What are you offering? Oh, you found it in the remainders bin. That dark-covered strange thing with the cat's eyes is my book, Unforgiving Destiny. And if you buy the what the hell is it? Oh yeah, the ebook. Don't read it, but that will fund me to finish the recordings that I'm very late in doing because of my day job. Yes, buy my crappy ebook, because you'll get the good audio version by paying me to stay home. There, I've done my plug, Shaun.
So, there you have it. Well, that was a load of nonsense, wasn't it? And if you enjoyed that, how about some out-of-date nonsense? I'll load up more of these. Yeah, that'll be fun.